Hi, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today's layout is created using Cocoa Vanilla Studio's new range, Storyteller, and it's actually a continuation from a layout I posted a couple of weeks ago on my channel. It was the Day 7 Scrap Squad 12 Days of Summer Scrap Lifts, and it was a lift from Julie Taylor's layout with some shards. And I showed how I made the shards, and I said I'm keeping the offcuts because I'll show you what to do with them another day, and that's what I've come to do. So I could have recreated another layout with shards, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I'm making these almost like mountains. They'd be fantastic if you had a photo of hiking or something like that. But this is just a picture of my husband and I in Boston, in Provincetown, when we went on a holiday to America a good few years ago now, back in 2015. So I'm just having a play around with the shards, making sure that I've got the same number on each side, the same colours, and all the papers that I use in this layout are scraps, pieces that I've cut off from the A5 paper pad on previous layouts. So just having a play around and checking that I'm happy roughly with the positioning of those shards, and then I'll just glue them down ever so slightly just to make sure that I'm happy with where they are. And as you can see there, I've just put my T-ruler in just to make sure that I'm happy that the levels are correct on both sides, because the photo will be positioned in between the two collections of shards. And once that's done, I want to map my photo. So I'll go in first of all with a piece of white cardstock, and I'm actually not going to rough up any of the edges in this layout, just decided to keep them clean lines. I think it was the thought of distressing all of those shards was just a little bit too much today. So just using my double-sided tape to stick the photo down onto the white, and then I'll go onto the scraps of paper that I've got to the left-hand side of me. None of them are quite big enough to map the photo on comfortably, so you'll see I'll have a little play around deciding which pieces to use and how to position them. And once that blue piece is cut down, I'll spend ages faffing and fiddling, deciding which way to map them. I sometimes struggle when my pieces aren't as big as the paper. Sometimes it just happens really easily, but today was one of those days where it just didn't quite come together. Just cutting off a rough edge of that wood grain there. And as I say, keep fiddling and messing, but I don't want to cover up too much of the shards, and that's the problem I've got. So I don't want to make the map too big. I want to make it look interesting as well. So turning and trying, messing about with different ways, and then I'll bring in a piece of the green. And I'm much happier once I've decided to add some green to it. So I'll leave that for now. And I'm going to use my Distress Oxide and Chip Sapphire to add some blue to the bottom of the layout. This is actually a picture of us on a small pier in Provincetown. You can see the sea in the background, so I thought it'd be nice to use the blue underneath. And this is where I'm going to put my title as well. So just smearing it all around, and then I use the packaging to daub it about a bit. really pleased with the way it's dried, with the darker and lighter variations in the paint. So as you can see, I matted the photo off screen while the paint was drying, and I've used a piece of green at the bottom left hand side, and now I'm tearing a piece of the blue just to bridge the gap where the trees are, because they've got wonky bottoms. I just want to cover that, so I created almost like a hill going from a small point and then adding it to the other side as well. Now there is a little gap above that to the right of the photo, you can see underneath the pink tree, but I will deal with that later. So using my T-square again to make sure that it's level on both sides. And then coming in with the foam to raise the photo and the mats up a bit. It really adds some dimension and definition and just makes the photo pop a bit more on the layout, even when it's in the page protector. So slightly overcut that, so just trimming it down. And then checking that I'm happy with the positioning, I use my T-ruler again to make sure that it's square, and then I'll glue that straight down. And then that's the base of the layout done. Once this is done, it's just a case of embellishing, covering up that little bit on the side underneath the pink tree that I'm not happy with, and choosing some embellishments. So I love that hashtag selfie, because most of the photos on this trip were selfies. And then this banner I thought was very ironic, because Ross looks really concerned. He wasn't used to taking photos, so it says so happy because he looks really quite grumpy, but he wasn't, I promise. And then just cutting this in half and saving the other half for another day, and that'll be where I put my date. So now I'm going to glue down those tips of the shards. I'm happy with the basis of the layout. And this is where I add my date. And rather than using my usual black ink, I've decided to go in with the chip sapphire. I thought that'd be nice with all the blue around where the date's going. I'm struggling to get it off my desk. The stickers in this Cocoa Vanilla are absolutely brilliant. They stick really well. And they're a lovely heavyweight cardstock as well. So now going through the ephemera to see what I can find in here. And straight away my eyes drawn to this camera. So I add the selfie word to that, and I'm really happy with that the way it is. And then finding some just offcuts of foam to stick the camera down and make sure that it's level on top of the photo. Just checking through, see what else I can see on there. Have a play with this banner, but it doesn't make it this time. Just not quite right with all the other bits going on. I think it's a bit too flouncy compared to the very straight edges that we've got around the rest of the layout. I still want to have a good play to see if it works. I'm just trying out some other bits and pieces, but I do quite like that floral, but sometimes I just don't want florals on my layout. This layout has nothing to do with flowers. I like this, and it does make it on the layout in the end, but it's definitely not right there. Too big there, looks odd on the side. So next I go into my little box of bits. I've got some Bramble Fox, some JD 3D, and some very old bits and pieces, paper clips and things. So I grab one of these clouds, which is very apt from JD 3D print because it was a rainy, windy, cloudy day, very drizzly. I think I want one of the JD 3D print stars, but not quite sure, so leave that for now. And then I decided to go in with my title. So the title, I'm using a very old American Crafts chipboard alphabet called Nutmeg in white, and I'm just going to simply put Provincetown on there, which is where we were. So I'll show you the beginnings of me putting the letters down, but I won't bore you with watching it all going down. And because it's such an old alphabet, the adhesive is failing on the chipboard, so I'm just going over each letter with some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive and sticking them all down. And that's the last letter down, and once that's all stuck down, I'll go down in with my journaling lines. I don't actually write the journaling yet, but that's me just checking that I've got the lines central. Again, I've gone for a symmetrical layout with things right down the middle, so it's just making sure that everything is kept in the middle. And then gluing on the camera and the cloud, because I know I want those to the left. But I do want to add a few more bits. It seems a little bit bare at the moment. So I'll add a little bit of washi, like this gold stripe. On that left hand side, just a tiny bit to add a bit of something. And then some of these black hearts, which we've got in the shop at Hey Little Magpie. So I love this washi tape. So just poking that underneath. And again, I'll cover that end. It won't just be left like that. So I'm coming in with my EK Success notebook punch, which I love, and I love both parts. I love the notebook edge and also the offcut, which is what I actually end up using on this. I'll try with the notebook edge first of all, but too much green. I've already got the green mat underneath the photo, and then I just take that piece and I'm quite happy with how that looks. So that does make it with a thin strip of green, just to bring the green in there. And I like the balance of that with the gold stripes on the left and then using that on the right. So just trimming off the overhang. And I realise the camera hasn't stuck down. I mustn't have used an adhesive, or I've knocked it while I've been doing things. And now I'm bringing in another JD 3D print, this time the anchor, and one of the Dotty About flare badges. It's a navy one, and it just goes really nicely with this collection. And a printable that Leanne made for me, one of these circles that I've got punched out in a little box. So just playing around with where I want to put things. It really was a faff today. Some days I just put things down and I'm very decisive, and other days it just seems to be a bit of a struggle. But I did get there, and I still enjoyed the process eventually. So sticking that down with my double-sided foam on my huge roll that I've got, again from Hey Little Magpie. Just looking through my box, deciding whether I want the white, and I decide actually the white anchor is much nicer than using the blue one this time, and it does go on top of that flare badge. But then of course I want something to put where that was, so I'll have another look through. Just looking through my little box of tricks, and I find this little white star from Bramble Fox, which I love. So that goes down next to it. And then, like I say, I wanted to add a bit more to the left-hand cluster. So this time I'm coming in with, first of all gluing that camera back down, and then coming in with some JD 3D print stars, a gold one and a black one. And then adding my journaling, just a tiny bit about the photo, because I intend on doing a whole album about our Boston trip. And finally I decide I want to add something at the bottom of the layout. I start off with this typed sentiment which says take the photo, but then I remember that lovely title piece that I'd tried before, the story behind the photo, and I really like that because it is just a photo of Ross and I, so you wouldn't necessarily know what was going on. So that goes on the bottom, and again just using my T-ruler once it's down to check that it is centralised on the page. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I use my scraps. Until next time, bye.